everyone, and we've got Yvonne here to take us on the next journey of our exploring of type with the type 5, which is a wonderful type. um, as I happen to be one, I'll say. So I'll start with acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we are joining from across Australia and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the Maori people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and extend that respect to all First Nations people with us today. So yeah, we're continuing our journey with type 5, and I've been very happy to have Yvonne as one of our board members so far. So an introduction to Yvonne. She's an educational consultant, an Enneagram guide, and founder of the Enneagram Experience, a personal growth and learning practice based in Noosa. With a background spanning business, finance, and tertiary teaching and course development, Yvonne integrates the Enneagram with practical insight into human behavior, decision-making, and personal development. Her work focuses on helping people recognize the personality patterns and blind spots that shape their relationship with money, well-being, and life direction. In her free time, you'll find her reading books, swimming at the beach, or enjoying beautiful walks with friends and family around the Sunshine Coast. So I'm very excited to hear this talk, Yvonne, and yeah, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Robin, and thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, let's do this. So, well, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So over the next hour, I'll be taking you through today's presentation, which is looking through the lens of the Enneagram Point 5. Okay, so to get a sense of what you're looking for, could you please maybe just use the chat to say whether your hair is 5 or if you have a 5 in your life, right? But all questions are welcome. Honestly, just post those in the chat too at any point, because I'd really love to hear from you. And also, you know, we're very fortunate today because we have the support of 2 fellow 5s. So Robin, our host, who you've met, and Cam on tech. So, wow, you know, the 5s are in the house. I would, you know, make the most of this rare sighting. All right, so today our kaupapa is first to begin with the brief karakia. Now, for those who aren't familiar, in Māori culture, karakia is the practice of setting an intention to ground us in the present and help create a sense of unity too. We also acknowledge people and places from the past and present in the physical world and beyond. So the karakia is what marks the opening of our shared learning space. Now, following that, I'll give an introduction about myself, so you know why I'm here doing the talking, right? I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, probably more than I normally would, because part of this is about me showing up to share about myself, rather than something that's like more theoretical or factual, which is much easier for me to do. All right, so after that, we're going to cover the 0.5 essentials at an introductory level. And then we're going to have a little, probably a discussion, maybe some breakout rooms. And we'll touch on the challenges and growth paths and then wrap up with some awareness practices. Okay, so this is the karakia. So, kia karakia tātou. Whakatau te wairua. Okay. Hā ki roto. Hā ki waho. Kia tau te mauri e kokiri nei, I ngā piki mea nai heke. O te rangamari e tāku e rapu nei. Tihei mauri ora. Okay, so let's begin. All right, well, this talk, it builds on Russ's presentation on the 9 types. And I'll also share my perspective as a woman from Aotearoa, New Zealand, with these 0.5 patterns. So, like us all, who I am is shaped by different roles and influences. You know, I'm a mum and a wife, a teacher, a business owner, and also someone who comes from 2 cultural worldviews. Ko Māori aho. Mō Ngāti Henerangi Ngāti Raukawa mea ngā pui o tupuna. So I'm Māori, and I'm also a New Zealander of English and Scottish descent. And I mention this today because culture influences how we see ourselves and others and the world around us, right? And this creates a bit of an interesting tension for the 5. So funnily enough, or not, I'm drawn to epistemology, right? That's the study of knowledge and how we know what we know, which just might be the most 5-ish thing I say. But from my Western culture, I'm shaped by a worldview that values individualism and autonomy and independence. Now, these qualities can feel very natural for 0.5 because, well, 5s already tend to internalize solitude and separation. So if you know 0.9, you'll be familiar with a more internalized belief in unity or oneness. Right? So 5s do something opposite. They internalize this sort of psychological separation from others and the need to rely on oneself. But in Te Ao Māori and many collectivist cultures, the worldview emphasizes interconnectedness, relational responsibility, and belonging. So the self is like not fully separate from the collective or from nature. There is no separation. So for me, one of the interesting parts of this journey has been learning to hold space for both perspectives, knowing they can coexist in harmony. Okay, so I also wanted to say how I've come to be here today. So I came across the Enneagram nearly 10 years ago. I was looking for a business tool to support our team development. Now, in New Zealand at that time, there was virtually no one teaching the Enneagram, well, at least not where I lived. So I began learning online, and then I introduced it at the office. And that's when the real learning began, because it was interactive and experiential and very emotional. So the more I learned and the more I shared, the more interested everyone became, and it had a massive impact. And it wasn't long before Enneagram language was integrated at work and at home. And I think it's just embedded in my DNA now. So, you know, I got into the Enneagram because I thought it would help me in business and teach me how to work with others. Well, it did that. But most of all, it taught me self-awareness, right? And how to be more compassionate with myself and the important people in my life. So I'm a massive advocate for the Enneagram, and I deeply believe in its power to create positive change. And that's what led me to join the team and help establish the EAANZ. And more recently to open the Enneagram experience in Noosa, which is an educational business focused on helping people understand their personality patterns and their relationship with money. So finally, I've also been influenced by many great teachers, but I'd like to acknowledge my Enneagram mentor, Carl Narsak, who's both inspired and grounded me when I needed it most. So on this note, my advice is to find your Enneagram crew, right? And find a good mentor, right? Because this isn't a journey we take on our own. Okay, how are we all doing there? All right, well, we're going to look at some theory now, right, which is obviously our favorite part. And we're going to begin with the 3 centers of intelligence. So I think it's difficult to really understand ourselves or others until we begin to gain a deep understanding of the centers and also the instincts. So for today, I'm just mentioning these really to keep them in our thoughts, right? But briefly, we'll just run through each center. So each center reflects a different way of experiencing and navigating the world. Right, so if you're in the body or the gut center, 8, 9, and 1, the focus here is prioritizing autonomy and action. Right, but this center can have issues with embodiment. The emotional theme connected to this center is anger. And then we have our heart center, right? Points 2, 3, and 4. And this focuses on emotional connection and identity, but can struggle with authenticity and emotional regulation. So the emotional themes here are shame and sadness, or as Russ called it, heartbreak. Quite like that one. And then we have the head center, 5, 6, and 7. And head types prioritize certainty through understanding, anticipation, and mental orientation, but can struggle with presence and direct engagement with reality. And all of this causes the emotional themes of fear and anxiety. Okay, so for the 5s who tend to, live in their heads and are guilty of overthinking, the mind becomes the primary way of interacting with reality. So rather than immediately engaging with life, 5s tend to observe first. So they analyze and categorize and then build these mental models before taking action. And this is why the 5 is often called the observer. So this is the search for insight, right? And all of this focusing on thinking opens mental space that helps promote clarity, and it also provides a sense of safety. But as we know, there's a downside to over-identifying with the head center, because in the heart center, feelings can become compartmentalized or intellectualized. So rather than fully experiencing our emotions in real time, 5s often retreat inward and then process them privately, and not through the heart, but through analysis. So many 5s struggle to find the language to express their feelings. And this can make 5s appear emotionally distant. Now the body center, this one's also underused. And this is where 5s can lose connection to their instinctual energy, right? Their vitality and physical embodiment, which means they stay in this kind of preparation mode, right? Rather than getting involved and stepping up. Okay. So what are the 5 essentials? Well, there is a fundamental concern with understanding how things work, but also with being competent and self-sufficient, and with conserving their inner resources to avoid this feeling of overwhelm or depletion. And all of this leads to strong desire for autonomy or independence. So by being private and seeking solitude, 5s avoid relying on others. Right? This minimizes intrusions or any outside demands. So at an unconscious level, the concern is, how can I remain capable, prepared, and protected from this feeling of being overwhelmed? Now, as we know, a key strategy is to seek knowledge or know-how. 5s are drawn to knowledge because having competency in whatever they want to know helps them feel more capable of navigating the world. So this happens through things like observation and research, reading, or just thinking deeply. With fewer disruptions, fives feel they can gain the understanding and the clarity that they believe they need. So knowledge is not just interesting, right? It's a form of safety that settles the underlying fears and anxiety that say, if I understand enough, I can handle life, I can handle reality. All right, so what we're discussing connects to the deeper structures within the Enneagram tradition, right? Namely the passion, which is associated with the lower heart, and then the fixations from the lower head center. So for point 5, the passion is called avarice, right? And avarice isn't about greed or money, right? It's a particular kind of suffering that takes us out of participating in life by convincing us we must hold back our energy and our emotions and just our engagement, right? All to protect ourselves. So underneath is often the unconscious feeling, if I give too much, there won't be enough left of me. So the 5 protects themselves through withdrawal and then privacy, and using observation and wanting to be self-sufficient. Now the fixation, so from the head center is the mental pattern connected to 5, which is sometimes called retentiveness or stinginess. Right? And this one reflects the tendency to minimize demands and carefully manage energy and engagement with the world. So too much pressure or unpredictability can feel intrusive or overwhelming. So this is when 5s will hold back on making commitments. Next, we have the 3 instincts. So these describe the core areas of attention that we all automatically track, right? And we all have these instincts, of course, but usually one of them takes priority. So instincts are separate from personality type, but they strongly influence what we consider important for survival. So if our type is about the strategies that we use to get what we want, instincts prioritize what we value in matters of survival. And this means that instincts are where our energy goes, right? And they inform the types of things that will most create stress or security in our lives. So the self-preservation instinct, right, focuses on stability, safety, and practical needs like energy and health, money, comfort, and sustainability. You know, its core concern is how do I stay secure and sustained? And then the social instinct focuses on groups, belonging, relationships, contribution, social dynamics, right? And this one asks, how do I belong and contribute? And then the sexual instinct focuses on intensity, attraction, and deep engagement. It's really looking for the juice, right? And it asks, what makes me feel fully alive and deeply engaged? So the dominant instinct infuses with our Enneagram type, resulting in different expressions of the same core personality structure. Now, the subtypes are the fastest way to gain clarity on your personal growth and to unlock blind spots that you might not otherwise see. So while all 5s share the same core structure around withdrawal and conserving energy and observing before they join in, the instincts shape where they direct their attention and what they're trying to protect or secure. So the self-preservation 5, which is sometimes called castle, this one focuses on protecting privacy, space, and energy. And the core question is, how do I avoid depletion and intrusion? Now, this is the most visibly withdrawn and stereotypical five-like subtype. These fives often create strong boundaries in order to feel safe and stay self-contained. Then we have the social five, known as totem, and this one emphasizes expertise and systems of knowledge, intellectual contribution, and ideals. So these fives often connect through ideas and training, research, or shared intellectual interests. They seek belonging through having competency and knowledge rather than emotional accessibility. Now, the sexual five is the most emotionally intense subtype and often the least stereotypically detached five. So withdrawal still happens, but it's around matters of intimacy and intensity and these idealized connections, right? So these fives long for rare, meaningful connections and resonance. They seek disclosure with a small number of carefully chosen people, but only under conditions of deep trust and safety. So they ask, who can I fully open myself to? So while all three are still 0.5, the instincts shape where the withdrawal goes and what the five is trying to secure through it. All right, I think it's helpful to ground 0.5 in some everyday life examples, because many five patterns are actually like very ordinary and easy to miss. Most sequence fives like to fly under the radar. Right? So keep the instincts in mind here, but one example of an everyday pattern is when the five delays replying to messages, right? And not necessarily because they don't care, but because communication can feel like one of these demands, right? That requires energy and thoughts, all of their emotions. Another example is that many fives research extensively before making decisions or taking action, right? So they want to feel informed and prepared. Then in social situations, fives commonly need time alone to recover and recharge after interactions. And this is even when it's enjoyable, right? They can feel mentally or energetically drained through the interaction. Fives also tend to mentally rehearse things beforehand, right? So conversations, meetings, introductions, presentations, even simple phone calls, right? So there's a feeling of needing to internally prepare before going ahead with it. The point is, many fives hold themselves back until they feel ready enough, or capable enough, or certain enough. And the challenge is that this sense of readiness becomes an endless moving target. Okay, so they really need a deadline. So what we've been discussing is that at the core of 0.5 lies a fear of being helpless or overwhelmed or incapable, of not having enough inner resources and being drained by others' demands. But now, given this is an unconscious belief, many fives wouldn't typically see or describe life this way, at least not until we begin to self-observe our own patterns and explore the deep questions around this need for autonomy, or the reasons for being private or just withdrawing, and also the sensitivities to feeling overwhelmed by all these needs from the world. So the question to ask is, why is there consistently a strong bias to hold myself back from participating in the world? Why do I have to feel prepared enough before I'm ready to step forward? So the core desires we see here are really just the flip side, right, of the fears So a desire for understanding. There's a desire for competency, expertise, and self-sufficiency. And all of this to feel safe and capable in the world. Okay, strengths. So the strengths of the 5 reflect their connection with the head center and a preference for mental engagement. And this makes 5s perceptive. They often notice complexity, picking up on patterns and inconsistencies. There can also be a fascination with systems, hidden dynamics, and underlying structures or behaviors that other people tend to overlook. So through all this curiosity and soaking up knowledge and understanding, 5's very independent learning tendencies mean they can become strong conceptual thinkers who are both analytical and objective. Right? So they can bring clarity and insight, innovation, strategic thinking, and of course, careful discernment. Right? It's a great word, discernment. Okay, but life is not without its challenges. So for many 5s, life can feel mentally and emotionally demanding quite early on. And because of this, 5s, that's when they soon learn to pull back. So rather than participating, they watch and try to understand things first, because the mind feels like a safer place than the world. So over time, this creates a pattern of withdrawal. And solitude can actually feel safer than social demands do. And certainly thinking feels safer than feelings and all of its messiness. So 5s want connection, but they also fear being consumed by other people's needs or their emotions. And so they may start to create this distance without meaning to. And they do this by retreating into their work or their research or their hobbies or their private interests. They can also move into analysis instead of fully experiencing their emotions, right? Which only creates a sense of isolation and disconnection from life itself. So when 5s lose presence, a central struggle is this fear of depletion, right? That feeling that energy and emotional capacity is limited and it needs to be carefully protected. So because of this, even ordinary demands from others can sometimes feel overwhelming. And so once again, the 5 protects themselves by holding back their energy, their emotion, and their participation. I think an area where 5 patterns become especially noticeable is in relationships. So 5s often want this deep connection, but at the same time, relationships can feel complicated because closeness is something that triggers fears of overwhelm, and it contradicts this inner self-belief of separateness or self-reliance. So as we know, 5s believe they need a lot of space, which is how they regulate themselves and recover energy. The other common pattern that's already mentioned is this delayed emotional processing and needing time to understand what they feel before they can actually express it. And so you might notice 5s go quiet or withdraw or think rather than actually just say something straight away. And all of this makes 5s appear emotionally distant or unavailable, even though they might be feeling quite a lot internally. I think interestingly, many 5s show care more practically or intellectually than they do emotionally. So they might share their knowledge or insight or solve problems or research something for you, or even just fix things quietly behind the scenes. Right? So sometimes the 5 is expressing love through attention, their understanding, or even practical support, rather than sharing their emotions or communication. Now, at their best, healthy 5s retain their depth and their insight and perceptiveness, while becoming far more present, more embodied, more emotionally available, and by participating in life. So the major shift is that they're no longer organizing themselves around this chronic withdrawal or energetic scarcity. Right? This is moving out of the head and abstraction and back into direct lived experience. It's one that becomes embodied and alive. And it's this kind of thing that leads to wisdom, not merely intelligence. At this healthy level, Russ Hudson talks about the gift of illumination. And these are those aha moments, right? When the light bulb goes on and everything comes into focus, and everything makes sense. So the core transformation is a move away from the need to distance or preserve myself, and the discovery that I can stay connected to life without losing myself. Okay, we're going to take a look at one more slide, and then we might jump into breakout rooms or open the floor for a bit of discussion. Okay, but first I think we'll use this next slide to launch us into our activity. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about the 5 patterns, and so I wanted to give here an ordinary example of how these patterns show up in everyday life. Right? And the example here is when we are introducing ourselves, so whether it's at work, social occasions, or even on Zoom. Right? So for many people, introductions are uncomfortable, right? But for 5s, they can activate these deeper patterns around withdrawal and feeling overwhelmed. Now, when we hear the 5's core fear described as, the world asks too much, it sounds a little dramatic, but even something as simple as introducing yourself can actually feel like a lot, right? For the 5, it's like, oh, now I have to join in, right? I was here, but I just wanted to watch. So although 5s do learn to participate, the withdrawal patterns are still running in the background. And it's things like this that contribute or lead to depletion. So on this slide, what you're seeing here is a form of meta self-analysis, right? 5's analytical. So self-analysis asks, why did I behave that way? Why did I behave that way? But meta self-analysis asks, what is the structure behind the way I'm responding? In other words, what are the predictable patterns showing up beneath the behavior? So everyone has automatic responses, right, that are shaped by our personality structure. While lots of people might feel nervous about introducing themselves, I think 0.5 has a particular sort of style of response that you might have noticed, right? So for example, a 5 might say, let someone else do the talking. Or they might just keep things very brief and factual, right? You're not going to hear their life story, okay? They'll also say things like, no thanks, or I'll pass. But perhaps the more classic move is just to avoid turning up at all, right? Especially if it's optional. So these are all withdrawal patterns. And when withdrawal becomes habitual, it reduces participation and can slowly lead to isolation. I think even fives can see these patterns in themselves, but they may not always be considering the negative impact this can have on their life and on others. So holding back can numb you down and reduce your vitality and connection and your sense of aliveness. Okay, so this activity is pretty self-explanatory. Right? It's your turn to make an introduction. And we're going to allocate about 5 minutes to the first part of this exercise. And let's just take a look at how many people we've got here. I'll stop sharing. Okay, so we can either do breakout rooms or have more of a group discussion. I think it looks like breakout rooms might be a good idea. How do we all feel about that? Now, who's setting up some breakout rooms? If you could do, yeah, thanks, Cam. Everyone into say two people per room.
That would be great. Did you see Claire's comment?
No, I didn't.
Just not to include Claire in the breakout rooms.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You got that, Cam?
I don't know if that's possible.
I think it is, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so when you're ready, Cam, let me know, and we'll just put everyone into breakout rooms. And really, just if there's 2 or 3 people, we'll have 5 minutes. So just everyone give yourself an introduction, and then what I'm going to do is I'll send through the instructions after 5 minutes of what comes next. Okay, so there's a part 2. And we'll spend about 10 minutes on this all together. So when you're ready, Cam, just take it away. Okay, so essentially what we're kind of like interested in here is, this bit about what does introducing yourself reveal about your personality structure? What are the things that your mind is monitoring as you're actually speaking to people? Are you worried? You're thinking about, am I saying too much? Am I making sense? Might be more of a 5-ish one. How am I being perceived? So the point of this really is that all of these things contribute to that practice of self-observation. Okay. All right, but we'll keep going for now, and we'll jump into the arrows. Now, when we talk about the arrows, I think it's important not to reduce them to the old idea of there's one good arrow and one bad arrow. All right, so for the 5, both arrows, 7 and 8, contain these contracted and liberated expressions. So the arrows describe psychological energies and capacities that are already available within the 5 structure. So this isn't just about whether the 5 moves to 7 or 8, but how these qualities are being expressed. So with 7, the contracted expression often appears as mental scattering or overstimulation, right? And it's when a 5 becomes restless or jumps between ideas, seeks some distraction, maybe they overplan possibilities, or escape into some kind of stimulation as a way of avoiding pressure. But of course, 7 also contains important liberating qualities for 5s. Healthy access to 7 brings about curiosity and spontaneity, flexibility, enjoyment, and a greater openness to life. So the 5 becomes less defended against experience and actually just more willing to participate. Now, the same principle applies to 8. In its contracted form, 8 can appear as defensiveness or excessive certainty, control, or hardening against being vulnerable. So a 5 may suddenly become forceful or overly rigid as a way of protecting themselves. But in the liberated form, right, 8 brings groundedness, embodiment, confidence, decisiveness, and this willingness to actually just engage directly with reality. So rather than remaining detached and observational, the 5 becomes more present, more impactful, and energetically alive. So the deeper point of the arrows is that both contain resources and distortions. Right? Growth involves deepening enough and developing enough awareness and presence to access the healthier qualities of both. Now for point 5, this often means integrating the grounded vitality of 8 alongside the openness and receptivity of 7. And this allows 5s to participate more fully in life without falling into this move of withdrawal or overcompensation. Okay, so growth for the 5 really involves being open to contact with the world. So re-entering moments of direct experience, like making introductions, trusting embodiment, right, and connecting with the vitality of the body. Of course, allowing emotional contact. This one's really important, right? And just participating more fully in life. So healthy 5s will gradually learn to trust in the interconnectedness of life, right? And that they can engage without being consumed. And that connection, right, or contact isn't necessarily depletion. Right? It's actually energizing. So reality becomes richer through participation and not just observation. I can participate in life and still remain whole. Okay, so awareness practices. I think a major practice for 5s is really just noticing the moment withdrawal begins, right? Notice that I'm disappearing again, right? I'm moving like into my head and out of the present moment instead of participating. So another important practice is returning attention to the body. Okay, so 5s can spend so much time in thought that they lose connection to physical presence and instinctual energy. So of course practices like walking, exercise, breath work is good, spending time in nature, being more playful and creative, or just simply slowing down enough to notice your bodily sensations, right? This can all help 5 reconnect to the lived reality instead of remaining so strongly identified with the mind. Now, emotional awareness is also important. Rather than that immediately wanting to analyze emotions, the practice is learning to stay with the feeling long enough to experience it directly. Right? So not fixing it, not explaining it, and not categorizing it, just noticing. What am I actually feeling right now? So developing some language around your feelings. And perhaps the deepest growth practice for 5 is simply participation, right? But participation before feeling fully prepared. So speaking before having the perfect answer. Engaging with something before certainty arrives. Really just letting yourself be seen before that feeling of complete self-protection sets into place. Now, because many 5s spend years unconsciously waiting to feel ready enough for life, growth comes through discovering. That readiness often comes after participation, right? Not before it. Okay, and that's the end of the slides. Stop sharing. And here we go.
Thanks, Yvonne. That was a lovely summary of both the good and the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yvonne has said that she's open to taking questions. So if anyone has any questions for Yvonne, we can have a few minutes for that just now.
And we do have some fives in the room, I see. We had a few people who had to disappear to back to work and things like that. So thank you for those who have been able to stick around a bit longer. Was there anything in there that didn't make sense? Five daughter. Yes, thank you, Rosie.
We have a question from Andre.
Thanks, Yvonne. It's really beautiful. I was noticing in the introductions, so as another withdrawing type, but different from a five, how I might put off doing an introduction of myself as well, but it's operating so differently. And it was so interesting to hear the narrative about why you might be holding back. I think it really helps the rest of us understand and appreciate what's going on and how precious it is when the five speaks. Like to actually hear what they have to say becomes so valuable, and it's worth waiting for. That's what comes on.
That's very nice. Thank you, Andre. Yeah, I think that's appreciated. And we do live in a pretty fast-paced world, right? And fives don't like that speed, right? It feels more appropriate to slow down and consider what it is that you're going to say. So those moments can slip by pretty quickly, and then you get into this habit of like, well, I didn't speak up, so I'm not going to do it now, and then you stop saying anything and contributing, so you don't feel part of it, and you slowly pull yourself away from those situations. So it's a really big deal to just speak up and say something. Yeah, and it's something that we do every day, or we choose not to. So it has an ongoing impact. Hey, James. Hi. I've got your mute on.
I think as well the fear and anxiety of stepping forward and being seen is a strong one for me to try and manage. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's constant for me. Like I know it's constant, and then of course I'm aware that it's constant, but it doesn't go away. So it's a practice, right, of doing those things like moving into my gut and my heart and like settling the anxiety, and sending some positive messages to myself that actually it's okay. Like that idea of contact with other people, that is actually ultimately what I'm looking for. So there has to be some bravery in there at some point.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, we're just about at time. So just before we finish up, I wanted to flag that the next talk in this series is at 5 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time this evening. And that's continuing the type talks with type 2 with Yulia Shamrell. So we've got a We've got a great lineup this evening, actually, with another one at 6:30, Using Body Intelligence to Relax Type Structure by Heather Brown. And then at 8 o'clock, Reacting and Responding Self and Integration Movement by Patrick K. Rose. So really hope to see some of you at that, some of those as well. And just want to really thank Yvonne again for a really insightful description of the fives and some self-exploration too, which was really nice to hear. And thank you everyone for your participation.
Yes, thank you. Really good to see you, and hope to see you more again too.
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Yvonne. Loved it.
Thanks, Yvonne.